What's going on, everybody? C4 here, and on the eve of the 2019 NFL Draft, I figure what better video than to have the final mock draft, but different mock draft than any mock draft we've done so far. It's going to be a little bit of a quicker version. This is a predict the pick mock draft, because I'm such an egotist. Every mock draft I've done on the channel so far has been, if I was the GM, what pick I would make. Now today, tables are turned because I want to kind of look like a smart ass tomorrow night. I'm going to try and predict what every team is going to do tomorrow night. Now, for this mock draft, there are no trades. Trades are just ridiculous to try to put in mock drafts, I think. So, yeah, no trades. Without further ado, let's get into the mock draft. At pick number 1, the Arizona Cardinals are on the clock, and I have them selecting Quinnen Williams, defensive end from Alabama. Now, for all these picks, I'm going to give you my main pick, and then we'll call it, I want to say wild card. I'll give you the main pick, and then I'll have kind of like an alternative pick. And then say maybe a week from now, I try to do like a score. The alternative pick will only be worth half a point, but the main pick will be worth 1 full point. For the Arizona Cardinals, I think there's 3 players in play clearly: Quinnen Williams, Nick Bosa, Kyler Murray. I think the Kyler Murray stuff, it's all smoke and mirrors. And if they weren't going to trade Rosen earlier, it's not going to happen on draft day. I feel like if you're going to give Cliff Kingsbury, a guy that wasn't good enough to be the head coach of Texas Tech, a job, it's probably because he aced the interview on how he's going to turn Josh Rosen into a franchise quarterback. You're not going to give him the job on the pitch that, hey, I'm going to blow up your franchise. So then you go to the defense, and it's either Nick Bosa or Quinnen Williams. I just think Nick Bosa, I think, is the better player, slightly, than Quinnen Williams. And yeah, Nick Bosa could play in a 3-4 like his brother Joey did, but I think ultimately for that 3-4 defense that the Cardinals are transitioning to, you're going to get the most bang for your buck, still an elite tier 1 player in this draft class that is a scheme fit in Quinnen Williams. I think, you got to go for the safe home run fit, and I think that is Quinnen Williams, because there still is, I guess, a little bit of a chance that Nick Bosa can't transition to being a 3-4 outside linebacker. However, my alternative pick here for the Cardinals at 1 is Nick Bosa. Going to pick number 2 with the San Francisco 49ers. This is very easy. It's Nick Bosa. That's exactly the type of player that they need. It's a dream pick if you are the 49ers. It's very simple. This pick is what is going to happen if Nick Bosa doesn't go pick number 1. They kind of have to go all in on edge rusher. They already did that a little bit with D Ford, but who is going to be his partner in crime? No better player in this year's draft than Nick Bosa. Alternative pick here for the Niners. If said Nick Bosa goes to Arizona, I think it will be Quinnen Williams. Going to pick number 3 with the New York Jets. Neither selecting Josh Allen, outside linebacker from Kentucky. They've invested a lot of money the last couple of offseasons at linebacker. They got Avery Williamson 2 years ago, CJ Mosley. But for that 3-4 defense, they don't really have a lot of edge pressure right now. And a guy like Josh Allen is a perfect fit. He's a legit top 5 talent. I don't even have an alternative option here for the Jets. It's Josh Allen all the way. Going to pick number 4, we have the Oakland Raiders, their first pick of the draft. And I am selecting Dwayne Haskins, quarterback from Ohio State. Now, there's been a lot of buzz about maybe Kyler Murray, but they haven't really done a lot of due diligence on Kyler Murray this offseason. They haven't brought him in for any official visits or anything like that. I think for a guy who has as many questions as Kyler Murray, the team that does draft him is either going to have to be a poorly ran team, which I don't think that Mike Mayock is, or it's going to be a team that's done their due diligence because of the whole like, is he going to play baseball, all these other questions, and there just hasn't been enough research done for me to say the Raiders are going to be the team that select him. But when you look at what QB they have shown a lot of interest in, that's Dwayne Haskins. Right now, from what little Raider games I watch, it doesn't seem like Derek Carr is a John Gruden QB. So you get that Tyrod Baker Mayfield scenario here for the Raiders. Derek Carr can be that transitionary quarterback, and at some point in the year, you get a guy like Dwayne Haskins that only has 1 year of playing college football. He can be handed the reins. He can be that exciting franchise quarterback that can lead this team into a brand new city and try to get some buzz around, because they can have, oh my God, we have one of the best young quarterbacks in football in Dwayne Haskins for this new Las Vegas Raiders team. It's all about marketing a little bit. And I think, you get that with a big-time franchise quarterback, which I just don't feel at this time for John Gruden is Derek Carr. But if Derek Carr does play well this season, he could turn it into being an asset that they can flip for a future pick next year. Alternative pick here for the Raiders, I have as Devin White, linebacker from LSU. Speaking of Devin White, going to pick number 5 are the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I do have them selecting Devin White, the linebacker from LSU. They need a partner in crime for Levante David in the center of that new 3-4 defense, and with Quan Alexander getting paid by the San Francisco 49ers, I think, you see the success of the linebackers last year, Van Der Esch, Roquan Smith, Darius Leonard, Tremaine Edmonds. Linebackers are absolute game changers, and while it does seem like an undervalued position, a guy like Devin White's going to be able to come in and improve that defense immediately day one. Alternative pick here for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Ed Oliver. Going to pick number 6, we have the first pick here for the New York Giants, and I'm selecting Brian Burns, outside linebacker from Florida State. Now, with Dwayne Haskins off the board, got to shuffle things up here just a little bit. I do think they have interest in another quarterback that they can wait for their second first-round pick, but they need edge rushers. A lot of transition for their edge rushers last couple years with schemes and everything. No more JPP. They shipped off Olivier Vernon. Right now, they got to get after the quarterback. If you're not getting an offensive lineman, they got to get a guy on the defensive side that can get pressure and generate pressure. And I think right now, for how well he looked at the combine, given the fact that weight concerns have been blown just completely out of the water with him checking in at 260 and looking as athletic as ever, I think Brian Burns has solidified himself as a top 10 talent. And when you're an outside linebacker needy team in the New York Giants that is still hoping that you can develop a Lorenzo Carter, the third-round pick last year out of Georgia, pair that with an athletic freak like Brian Burns, it's going to cause a lot of trouble, because right now, got some good offensive lines in the NFC East in the Dallas Cowboys and Philadelphia Eagles. Alternative pick here for the Giants could be Dwayne Haskins if he doesn't go at 4 to the Raiders. Go to pick number 7 with the Jacksonville Jaguars. I was selecting Jawan Taylor, tackle from Florida. It seems like the player they've shown the most interest in this offseason makes complete sense. They are a tackle away from really having one of the better offensive lines in the AFC. A guy like Jawan Taylor is a very safe tackle in this year's draft class. So it seems like a very easy pick. But alternatively, they could look at maybe TJ Hawkinson, tight end from Iowa. Pick number 8, the Detroit Lions. I am selecting TJ Hawkinson, tight end from Iowa. I don't think for 1 minute, the guy that's being labeled as the next Gronk is not going to get the attention of a guy that went up against Gronk for a bunch of years in practice, and Matt Patricia. They got Jesse James from the Steelers. He's done nothing to say, hey, let's not get the guy that might be the most hyped tight end prospect in the last 5 years, and let's get a big-time weapon that our offense really has been lacking pretty much our entire Matt Stafford era. So a guy like TJ Hawkinson can come in and complete that offense and compete and be a big-time contributor right away. But an alternative option here, maybe for the Detroit Lions, I'm looking at maybe Byron Murphy from Washington. Going to pick number 9, we have the Buffalo Bills. I was selecting Ed Oliver, defensive tackle from Houston. I've been very, very adamant that Ed Oliver is my number 1 player in the draft, but because of size and stuff like that, some teams could be scared. But who's not going to be scared? Sean McDermott. He lost his starting defensive tackle in Kyle Williams. He has one of the most overpaid defensive tackles in Starla Tulele. Not a lot of stability going forward for that inside spot. You got Harrison Phillips, could develop later on, but the fact that the best player in the draft is still on the board at number 9 in Ed Oliver, for a DC that's as creative as McDermott, they'll be able to find a way to maximize his potential. Very easy pick for the Buffalo Bills. But an alternative option could maybe be DK Metcalf, wide receiver from Ole Miss. Going to pick number 10, we have the Denver Broncos, and I'm selecting Drew Lock, quarterback from Missouri. Don't even have an alternative here. He is a John Elway prototype QB. Tall, check. Big arm, check. That's pretty much it. Going to pick number 11, we have the Cincinnati Bengals, and I'm selecting Andre Dillard, offensive tackle from Washington State. This is a team that pretty much has 2 glaring positions they need to get better at, the offensive line and maybe the linebacking core. And I feel for right now, you can get linebackers in the 2nd round, 3rd round, 4th round, day 2, early day 3, but you're not going to be able to get franchise tackles. They have Cordy Glenn, who's all right. Other than that, it's just a crapshoot. But a guy like Andre Dillard, who came into the draft, is maybe one of the best pass protectors, and then has the type of combine that he has, showing that he is far and away the most athletic offensive tackle in the class. Seems like he's getting a lot of buzz right now to be a fringe top 10 player. And sitting there still at 11 for the Bengals, I think you could see him be a future left tackle and then swing maybe Cordy Glenn to right tackle. Alternative option here for the Bengals, still an O-lineman, Cody Ford from Oklahoma. Going to pick number 12, first pick for the Green Bay Packers, I'm selecting Jonah Williams, offensive lineman from Alabama. The Packers have been one of the few teams that have done a little bit extra work on Jonah Williams this offseason. It makes sense. I mean, outside of David Bakhtiari, they don't really have any, really good offensive linemen. And a guy like, Jonah Williams, I think he can play guard or tackle. So what you could see happen is you have him start maybe at left or right guard. And then next year, where it's pretty clear that Brian Bulaga is going to be moving on, he could emerge as your other tackle, oppose David Bakhtiari. Because ultimately, for an offensive line that's not that good, improving said offensive line, because they spent a lot of money in free agency on the defense, protecting Aaron Rodgers should be, primary objective. And Jonah Williams, who might be the safest player in this year's draft class at 12, is a great value pick for Green Bay. An alternative option, even though they did spend a lot of money at edge, they have shown a lot of interest in Montez Sweat, the defensive end from Mississippi State. Speaking of Montez Sweat, going to pick 13, the Miami Dolphins, I'm selecting Montez Sweat, defensive end from Mississippi State. Had an insane combine, one of the greatest combines ever for a defensive end. Has, a heart issue. I think he has an enlarged heart, and we have seen, just as far as last year, Mo Hurst, regarded as a top 20 talent, slipped what was he, round 4 or 5 to the Raiders. And look, he actually played very, very well. Was debatably the best rookie pick for the Raiders last year. So I think teams are going to, some teams will write Montez Sweat out the board. Other teams are still stuck with him being a first-round talent. And I think a team like Miami, who's done a lot of due diligence on Montez Sweat, probably going to be fairly comfortable, or at least as comfortable as any team that could potentially select him in the first round. They don't have anything really at edge rusher. You got Charles Harris, former first-round pick, that's struggled to live up to any expectations right now so far. Brian Flores needs that premier edge rusher, and that could very well be Montez Sweat. Alternative option here for the Miami Dolphins, Clelin Ferrell, defensive end from Clemson. Going to pick 14, Atlanta Falcons. Ireland selecting Cody Ford, offensive lineman from Oklahoma. You just pretty much look to try to find a weakness for the Falcons. You could say maybe defensive line depth, but ultimately that right side of the offensive line is not very good. And Cody Ford is plug and play, I think, at either position. He can be a guard, he can be a tackle. He is a very safe player for an offensive line that, is pretty damn good. But that right side is not hot right now. And the fact that at 14, you're getting a guy that's going to be an immediate upgrade to either one of those spots, it's a can't-miss pick for the Falcons. An alternative picture here for Atlanta, if he does slip, they've shown a lot of interest in Ed Oliver, and I would like to see, as long as they're not playing Philadelphia, in Ed Oliver in a Dan Quinn defense. Going to pick 15, the Washington Redskins. Ireland selecting Kyler Murray, quarterback from Oklahoma. Now, I don't think they're going to be able to sit at pick 15 and get this, but with the rumors that Dan Snyder's taking over the draft room there, it's a lot of train wreck going on. Why not draft the polarizing QB that last second canceled his visit to go visit your team? I think from that standpoint, it is the most Washington thing that can happen. But I think ultimately, if you're a Redskin fan, I think I want Kyler Murray. You need a QB. You need someone that can give this team a pulse. I think more so than any QB in this class, more so than any player in this class, Kyler Murray is that guy that can bring it to you. And there is a chance that he could become the next Russell Wilson and not the next RG3. I think when you're a team that is in as much of a purgatory that the Redskins are, you got to make that risk. Alternative pick, though, if the Redskins do want to go safe, maybe look at Chris Lindstrom, the guard from Boston College. Going to pick 16, we the Carolina Panthers. I'm selecting Clelin Ferrell, defensive end from Clemson. Fairly easy pick. I mean, Ferrell is a legit, top 5 defensive end in the class. Slipping just a little bit because he hasn't been able to do off-field workouts. Defensive end is a massive need for the Carolina Panthers, so very easy. If I had to pick an alternative, Carolina has shown a lot of interest in Greg Little, tackle from Ole Miss this offseason. Going to pick number 17, the second pick for the New York Giants. I'm selecting Daniel Jones, quarterback from Duke. There's been a lot of talk. Maybe the Giants at 6 going Dwayne Haskins, or could they get Kyler Murray and stuff like that? But the most attention they've given to a QB this year is Daniel Jones. You'll be able to get that redshirt year for Eli Manning. I'll be surprised if they don't get a QB at some point. Maybe they have to get Daniel Jones at 6, but it does look like Daniel Jones is going to be the QB that the Giants select if they select a QB, which I think they probably will be pressured into doing, and will be able to sit behind Eli Manning. And you're drafting a guy just based off his traits. He's had some flashes, and hey, maybe a year holding the clipboard behind Eli Manning, developing a little bit, could be best, and they could have an intriguing QB prospect in 2020. An alternative option here for the Giants at 17 is another player they've showed a lot of interest in this offseason, and that's Rashawn Gary, defensive end from Michigan. Going to pick number 18 with the Minnesota Vikings, and I'm selecting Garrett Bradbury, offensive lineman from NC State. I think the play would be having Bradbury be their center. And then you take Pat Elflein, who's been a meh center, but he played center and guard at Ohio State, and you have him go to one of the guard spots. So for an offensive line that needs to get better in a lot of spots, hypothetically speaking, you're going to be getting 2 spots of improvement with the one selection of Bradbury. Bradbury had an outstanding combine. I think he's the best center of the last couple years at least, and would definitely go a long way improving that O-line there in Minnesota. An alternative pick for the Vikings, if they don't go Bradbury, could be Greg Little, tackle from Ole Miss. Going to pick number 19, we have the Tennessee Titans, and I'm selecting Jerry Tillery, defensive end from Notre Dame, high upside type player. I think a lot of buzz that he's pretty much solidified himself as a first rounder. I think when you're Tennessee, the fact that he's 6'7", 305 is only going to get better, only going to add more weight onto that frame. They need to find a way to get more pressure from that line that's not just Jarrell Casey. And, high upside. Lots of upside from Jerry Tillery. Man, he was on an absolute tear at a point in time last year. I think it was 3 weeks in a row. He was getting 3-4 sacks. He was unblockable. So that potential is there, an incredibly high ceiling for Mike Vrabel. Alternative pick here for the Tennessee Titans. If they don't go Tillery, I might be looking at Hollywood Brown, wide receiver from Oklahoma. Could be the long-term partner for Corey Davis out there. Going to pick number 20 with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I was selecting Greedy Williams, cornerback from LSU, the best corner in the draft. Slips to a team that low-key really needs to get better at cornerback. That's pretty much it. I mean, Greedy Williams doesn't like to tackle, but if you want a shutdown, ball-hawking corner, there's not a better one in the class. An alternative pick here for Pittsburgh could be Devin Bush, linebacker from Michigan. Going to pick number 21, we the Seattle Seahawks. I was selecting Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, safety from Florida. I think this is actually a home run pick. I don't even have an alternative. They need to find someone that can fill the void left by Earl Thomas. You know, a cover hybrid type safety that brings a lot of leadership qualities. And that is really Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. I know there's some Florida Gator bias, but I've been saying he's the best safety in the class for a long time. It seems like a lot of people in the scouting community have come along to that. And I'm very excited to see wherever he goes. And he'd be a great fit in Seattle. Pick 22, we have the Baltimore Ravens. I was selecting DK Metcalf, wide receiver from Ole Miss. I am higher on DK than most, but this is a slip. But you know, Baltimore's done a lot of due diligence. It's a great fit for him. I'd love them to be low-key one of my favorite teams in the AFC, being able to see Lamar Jackson and DK go. But Baltimore desperately needs wide receivers, and I think they'll have to take the gamble that they can help develop and kind of complete the project that is DK Metcalf. But for the time being, you get a freak of nature that will offer immediate value as a rookie. An alternative pick here for Baltimore, though, if they don't go wide receiver, maybe look at Garrett Bradbury, offensive lineman from NC State. Going to pick 23. The Houston Texans. Here's my big surprise gamble pick. I'm selecting Titus Howard, offensive tackle from Alabama State. Now, Titus Howard's a guy that's been like, it looks like, you know, every team can bring in 30 players for your top 30 visits. Seems like almost every team has brought in and done a lot of research on Titus Howard. He's getting a lot of buzz that I don't really see outside, you know, when people are talking about the draft saying Titus Howard's the first round. But you just look at the visits. He is the most common player that's popping up on everybody's list. And for me, when there's smoke, there's fire. And Titus Howard is getting a lot of respect around the league. And I would not be surprised to see him go in the first round to a team that desperately needs an offensive lineman anywhere. I think Titus Howard has all the traits that you want to look for at a starting tackle. And if you look at pretty much all the scouting reports, everyone says that he's, has that upside to be a franchise tackle. But it's going to be a little bit of work coming from Alabama State. So, as long as Houston wants to put in the work, they could be getting a diamond in the rough here at pick 23. Alternative pick here, assuming that Andre Dillard's out the board, would be obviously looking at Greg Little, the tackle from Ole Miss. Going to pick number 24, the second pick for the Raiders. I was selecting Devin Bush, linebacker from Michigan. I mean, finally, Raiders draft that linebacker that they so desperately need. Devin Bush screams John Gruden guy, high character, high motor, sideline to sideline. Your 2019 prototypical linebacker. He'd be able to start right away. My alternative pick here for the Raiders at 24 could be a slip because of the medical, Montez Sweat. Going to pick number 25, my Philadelphia Eagles. I was selecting Christian Wilkins, defensive tackle from Clemson. I think the Eagles, they're clearly going to go offensive line or defensive line. They're going to build through the trenches. I think at this point, you need to get that partner in crime for Fletcher Cox. It's not really going to be Malik Jackson. Malik Jackson is not... He's going to be a part of a healthy rotation, but he's not that starter. We need that guy that's like that Timmy Jernigan role, and that is Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins is like a better version of Timmy Jernigan. He is my dream pick right now for the Eagles, and he's still on my board. Alternative option, which more and more I think it could potentially happen. I'd be a little frustrated with the pick, but it's one of those picks, wait and see. It's going to probably be very, very good in the end. Could potentially be Jeffrey Simmons from Mississippi State. Going to pick number 26, Indianapolis Colts. Speaking of Jeffrey Simmons, I am selecting Jeffrey Simmons, defensive tackle from Mississippi State. Simmons had some off the field in high school, but that stuff's pretty much been gone. And the Colts have done a lot of due diligence. And a guy like Jeffrey Simmons, who is going to be a guy that'll help you win for your playoff push. I mean, the Colts are a really strong roster from top to bottom right now, and they have the luxury to maybe get a guy that's not going to be able to play and have to get put on the PUP for the first couple games of the season. But for that back end stretch of the year, get that extra interior presence. I think a team like the Colts could desperately need that. And then long term, you're getting a guy that's a legit top 10 talent. You pick 26, you're laughing. It's very much a Chris Ballard move, and they've done enough due diligence for a guy that has had some character issues that I think they'd feel a lot of confidence making the selection at 26. Alternative option here for the Colts would be Jerry Tillery if he's still on the board. Going to pick number 27, third pick for the Raiders. I'm selecting Byron Murphy, cornerback from Washington. This is a team that needs to get better in the secondary. You have Garyon Connolly, but other than that, not very good. You're getting a good value pick here in Byron Murphy, who I think is a top 20 talent. He's slipping a little bit just because a lot of these teams don't need, have a glaring need for cornerback right away. And there is a high bust rate for corners, which could kind of scare some teams off, but not the Raiders for a guy like Byron Murphy, who I think could probably start day one as either corner 3 or maybe earn that cornerback 2 role. Alternative pick here for the Raiders could be another corner if they so choose in DeAndre Baker from Georgia. Going to pick number 28, the LA Chargers. I'm sending Greg Little, offensive tackle from Ole Miss. I've been pounding the table for a couple years now. The Chargers, just fix your tackle situation. Russell Okung and Sam Tevi, they're not good enough for you to make a legit Super Bowl push. You can have one of them, keep Okung, but you need to solidify the other side. When you get a guy like Greg Little, whose stock's trending down just a little bit, but still has that potential to develop into a franchise left tackle, you got to take that opportunity right now. And especially with Anthony Lynn as your coach. He's a running back background. He knows the importance of an offensive line. You got Forrest Lamp, you got Dan Feeney, you got Pouncey. Okun's all right. Get a guy like Greg Little in to develop, and I think he honestly would have a good shot at starting at right tackle for them immediately. Alternative option here for the Chargers, maybe Juan Thornhill, bringing another safety for a very good secondary. Pick number 29, we have the second pick here for the Seattle Seahawks, one they just recently acquired for Frank Clark. I'm selecting Rashawn Gary, defensive end from Michigan. I mean, Gary has that injury right now that no one really knows if he's, when he's going to be able to play, which I think is going to affect his stock. He's a polarizing player because he doesn't really have the college production, which could affect his stock. Right now, he's just a great athlete and has to reach that potential. And you look at a team like Seattle, they constantly have proven success of developing players on the defensive side. I would love to see Gary there as long as they're not playing the Eagles. I think that's a terrific landing spot for him, even though that is a pretty big slide from going as almost a consensus top 10 talent to slipping almost out of the first round. But I think when the Seattle Seahawks going from Frank Clark to Rashawn Gary, I mean, kind of makes sense as a cheaper option. An alternative option here for Seattle, though, at pick 29 could be N'Keal Harry, wide receiver from Arizona State, especially with the future of Doug Baldwin being kind of unclear. Going to pick number 30, the second pick for the Green Bay Packers, I'm selecting Noah Fant, tight end from Iowa. I don't even have an alternative pick here. They desperately want to get another tight end. Two tight ends seem quite, important in a Matt LaFleur offense. So you have Jimmy Graham for the time being, but a guy like Noah Fant, who's a legitimate first-round talent and an incredibly intriguing option to see how a quarterback of Aaron Rodgers' caliber could utilize him. I think this is a home run pick here for Green Bay. Going to pick number 31, the LA Rams. I'm selecting Dexter Lawrence, defensive tackle from Clemson. It's scary. It's scary to think about Dexter Lawrence and Aaron Donald being on the same line, but the Rams don't have a nose tackle right now by letting Ndamukong Suh go because there's just no way they can pay him. There is an open spot in the interior of the defensive line between Aaron Donald and Michael Brockers, and I think getting a guy who I think is honestly a top 10 talent in Dexter Lawrence, adding to that defensive line, another weapon for Wade Phillips to utilize, that is quite terrifying, and I really, really don't want to see this. As a fan of a team that's probably going to have to go through the Rams at some point in the Eagles, having Dexter Lawrence, that's just not going to be fair. Potential alternative pick here. The Rams have shown a lot of interest in safeties, so maybe Juan Thornhill from Virginia. And then finish up the draft at pick 32. We have the New England Patriots, and I'm selecting N'Keal Harry, wide receiver from Arizona State, with the future still being very, very murky with Josh Gordon and no more Gronk. They just need another weapon here at anywhere on the offensive side, not excluding running back. So, I mean, Irv Smith could be in play. There could be other wide receivers. But I think N'Keal Harry is a legitimate first-round talent, would bring that outside wide receiver role that they kind of need right now. They tried to get it. Malcolm Mitchell didn't pan out. You don't really know what's going on with Josh Gordon. So right now they need that outside guy that's going to be able to get separation, can do the jump balls, be a little bit of a red zone threat that they're losing it in Gronk. And I think at pick 32, a very, very good value pick here in N'Keal Harry, who slipped just a little bit. But he's a legitimate, in my opinion, a top 20 player. And that's the kind of guys that Patriots continually get at the bottom end of the first round. If they don't trade back, they get the guys that slip. Potential alternative pick here for the Patriots, if they don't go Harry, could be wide receiver A.J. Brown from Ole Miss. So there you go, guys. That is my Predict the Pick final mock draft for the 2019 draft. Let me know how I did. Give me some of your guys' predictions in the comment section below. And I can't wait to see you guys back here tomorrow. We'll be doing probably a couple reaction videos here and there. Obviously, we'll hit up the Philadelphia Eagles pick and do maybe some of the more notable trades and stuff. But ultimately, I think I am going to be streaming on my Twitch throughout the draft or something. I'll figure it out. So I hope you guys do stay tuned for the channel throughout the draft weekend. And thank you guys for watching today's video. As always, if it's your first time stopping by, don't be afraid to hit that subscribe button. And until next time, it's C4 saying peace out.